Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you truly care about your health, your weight, and your future, then you're in the right place. Before we start, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends and family because these health videos can genuinely change lives. And I have one big dream: to reach 100,000 subscribers as soon as possible. So if you support this mission of spreading real health awareness, please help this channel grow by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video everywhere. Now, today's topic is something most people are doing every single night without realizing it could be silently slowing their metabolism and making weight loss much harder. What if the real reason you're struggling to lose weight has nothing to do with calories at all? What if one simple habit you do every night is silently keeping your body in fat storage mode for hours while you sleep? Most people never realize that the body's ability to burn fat at night depends heavily on hormone activity, especially insulin. And when insulin stays elevated during sleep, your metabolism changes completely. Your body is designed to switch into a repair and fat-burning state overnight. During deep sleep, several powerful metabolic processes are supposed to activate. Growth hormone increases, fat cells release stored energy, and the liver begins regulating blood sugar more efficiently. But there's one major problem. Late-night eating, especially foods high in sugar or refined carbohydrates, can interrupt this entire process. Every time you eat, your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin's primary job is to move glucose out of the bloodstream and into the cells. But insulin also has another important role that many people overlook. It blocks fat burning. As long as insulin levels remain elevated, the body receives a signal that energy is still incoming, so it stops accessing stored body fat for fuel. This becomes especially problematic at night because the body naturally becomes more insulin resistant in the evening. In other words, your cells do not handle glucose as efficiently late at night compared to earlier in the day. That means the same bowl of cereal, dessert, chips, or late-night snack causes a much larger glucose and insulin spike before bed than it would during daylight hours. When insulin remains elevated during sleep, the body cannot efficiently transition into nighttime fat metabolism. Instead of burning stored fat, the body continues relying on circulating glucose. Over time, this can contribute to increased abdominal fat, slower metabolism, elevated triglycerides, and worsening insulin resistance. One of the biggest hidden dangers is the effect this has on the liver. The liver plays a central role in regulating metabolism overnight. During fasting periods while you sleep, the liver should begin stabilizing blood sugar and helping the body shift into fat utilization. But constant nighttime insulin spikes force the liver to continue processing excess glucose instead. This can increase fat accumulation inside the liver itself, contributing to fatty liver disease, which is now extremely common even in people who are not severely overweight. Another important hormone affected by nighttime eating is growth hormone. Growth hormone is one of the body's most powerful fat-burning and anti-aging hormones. It helps preserve lean muscle mass, supports tissue repair, and stimulates the breakdown of stored fat. Most growth hormone release occurs during deep sleep. However, elevated insulin can suppress growth hormone activity significantly. So, when people eat late at night, especially sugary foods, they may unknowingly reduce one of the body's most important metabolic recovery mechanisms. This hormonal disruption also affects cortisol. Normally, cortisol should gradually decrease at night to allow deep, restorative sleep. But unstable blood sugar during sleep can trigger stress responses in the body. If blood glucose drops rapidly after a large insulin spike, the adrenal glands may release cortisol and adrenaline to raise blood sugar again. This can lead to restless sleep, nighttime waking, increased heart rate, and cravings the next morning. Poor sleep quality then creates another metabolic problem. Sleep deprivation alters leptin and ghrelin, the two major hunger-regulating hormones. Leptin helps you feel satisfied, while ghrelin stimulates hunger. Even one night of disrupted sleep can increase ghrelin and reduce leptin, making you crave more sugar and processed carbohydrates the next day. This creates a vicious metabolic cycle that becomes harder to break over time. The timing of food matters more than most people think. The body follows circadian rhythms, which influence insulin sensitivity, digestive efficiency, hormone production, and energy metabolism. Eating large meals late at night sends conflicting signals to the body's internal clock. Instead of focusing on repair and recovery, the body stays metabolically active digesting food during hours when it should be resting. This does not mean the body stops working at night. In fact, nighttime is when some of the most important healing processes occur. The brain clears metabolic waste, cells repair damage, tissues regenerate, and hormones rebalance. But these systems function best during a fasting state, not while processing constant glucose and insulin surges. One of the most effective strategies for improving nighttime fat burning is allowing a longer fasting window before sleep. Finishing meals earlier in the evening gives insulin time to decrease before bedtime. This allows the body to shift more efficiently into fat-burning mode overnight. Many people notice improvements in sleep quality, reduced cravings, better morning energy, and gradual weight loss simply by avoiding late-night eating. The key is understanding that weight gain is not only about calories. Hormones control whether the body stores fat or burns it. And one of the worst times to repeatedly trigger insulin is right before sleep, when the body should naturally be entering its most powerful metabolic recovery state. Most people think sleep is simply a time when the body shuts down and rests. But metabolically, nighttime is one of the most active and important periods for fat burning, hormone repair, and cellular recovery. And there's one powerful hormone that plays a major role in this entire process: growth hormone. What many people don't realize is that one common nighttime habit can severely reduce this hormone's effectiveness and quietly slow down weight loss for years. Growth hormone is often associated with muscle growth, but its metabolic functions go far beyond that. During deep sleep, the pituitary gland releases large amounts of growth hormone to help repair tissues, preserve lean muscle mass, regulate blood sugar, and stimulate fat breakdown. In many ways, growth hormone acts like the body's overnight metabolic repair system. One of its most important jobs is activating lipolysis, which is the process of breaking down stored body fat and converting it into usable energy. This is especially important during sleep because the body naturally shifts toward fasting mode overnight. When everything is working properly, the body lowers insulin, increases growth hormone, and begins using stored fat as fuel. But there's a major problem. Eating late at night, especially consuming sugar, refined carbohydrates, or frequent snacks before bed, can interfere with this hormonal process dramatically. The reason comes down to insulin. Whenever you eat, insulin rises to manage blood sugar levels. But elevated insulin directly suppresses growth hormone release. In other words, the more insulin circulating in your bloodstream before sleep, the less efficiently your body can produce and utilize growth hormone overnight. This creates a metabolic conflict inside the body. Growth hormone is trying to mobilize fat and repair tissues, while insulin is signaling the body to store energy instead of burn it. These two hormones essentially work in opposite directions. When late-night eating becomes a regular habit, the body loses one of its most important windows for nighttime fat burning. Instead of entering deep metabolic repair mode, the body stays focused on digestion, glucose management, and energy storage. Over time, this can slow fat loss, reduce muscle preservation, and contribute to gradual weight gain, especially around the abdomen. The relationship between growth hormone and muscle mass is also extremely important. Muscle tissue is metabolically active, meaning it helps the body burn more calories even at rest. Growth hormone helps preserve and repair muscle during sleep. But when growth hormone activity decreases, muscle recovery becomes less efficient. Over time, this can contribute to lower metabolic rate, increased fatigue, and reduced energy expenditure. This becomes even more significant with aging. Natural growth hormone production already declines with age, which is one reason many adults notice slower metabolism and increased body fat over time. But poor nighttime habits can accelerate this process even further. Late-night snacking, poor sleep quality, excessive sugar intake, and chronic insulin elevation can all reduce the body's natural hormone efficiency. Sleep quality itself also affects growth hormone production. Most growth hormone release occurs during deep, slow-wave sleep. If sleep becomes fragmented or shallow, hormone output decreases significantly. This is why people who sleep poorly often struggle with stubborn weight gain, increased cravings, and low energy despite trying different diets. Blood sugar instability during the night is one major reason sleep becomes disrupted. After consuming sugary foods before bed, insulin rises rapidly. Then, several hours later, blood glucose may drop too low. When this happens, the adrenal glands release cortisol and adrenaline to stabilize blood sugar levels. This stress response can interrupt deep sleep cycles without the person even realizing it. As cortisol rises overnight, the body shifts into a more catabolic and inflammatory state. Elevated cortisol encourages fat storage, especially visceral fat around the organs. It also increases appetite and cravings the next day, particularly for carbohydrates and processed foods. This creates a hormonal cycle that becomes very difficult to escape. Another important factor is the effect on recovery and inflammation. Growth hormone supports cellular repair throughout the body, including muscles, connective tissues, skin, and even the immune system. Reduced growth hormone activity may contribute to slower recovery after exercise, increased inflammation, poorer skin quality, and lower overall vitality. The liver also depends heavily on nighttime metabolic balance. During healthy fasting periods while sleeping, the liver helps regulate glucose production and supports fat metabolism. But repeated nighttime insulin spikes force the liver to continue processing incoming glucose instead of focusing on repair and detoxification functions. One of the most effective ways to support natural growth hormone production is creating a longer fasting window before sleep. Finishing your last meal several hours before bedtime allows insulin levels to decrease naturally. This gives the body the opportunity to enter a deeper fat-burning and repair state during sleep. Supporting deep sleep is equally important. Reducing nighttime sugar intake, avoiding heavy meals before bed, limiting alcohol, and maintaining stable blood sugar can all help optimize nighttime hormone balance. The body was designed to heal, repair, and burn fat during sleep. But this process depends heavily on hormonal timing. When insulin stays elevated at night, growth hormone cannot function efficiently. And when growth hormone becomes suppressed night after night, the body gradually shifts away from fat burning and toward fat storage, slower metabolism, and reduced metabolic health overall. What if your bedroom lights, phone screen, or late-night TV habit are doing more than just keeping you awake? What if they are directly interfering with your metabolism, increasing stress hormones, and making fat loss significantly harder? Most people never connect artificial light exposure at night with weight gain, but the science behind this connection is extremely powerful. Your body operates on an internal biological clock called the circadian rhythm. This system controls nearly every major function in the body, including hormone production, sleep cycles, metabolism, insulin sensitivity, digestion, and fat burning. One of the most important hormones regulated by this clock is melatonin. Melatonin is often called the sleep hormone, but its role goes far beyond helping you fall asleep. Melatonin acts as a master regulator for nighttime repair and recovery. It helps coordinate metabolic processes, supports mitochondrial function, reduces oxidative stress, and plays a major role in maintaining healthy hormone balance during sleep. Under normal conditions, melatonin begins increasing after sunset as darkness signals the brain that it is time to prepare for rest. The pineal gland then releases melatonin to help the body transition into nighttime physiology. Core body temperature decreases, cortisol begins falling, and the body enters a state designed for repair, detoxification, and fat metabolism. But artificial light exposure at night disrupts this process dramatically. The biggest problem comes from blue light emitted by phones, tablets, televisions, LED lights, and computer screens. Blue light strongly suppresses melatonin production because the brain interprets it as daylight. Even moderate exposure at night can delay melatonin release and confuse the body's internal clock. When melatonin becomes suppressed, multiple metabolic problems begin developing simultaneously. First, cortisol regulation becomes disrupted. Cortisol is the body's primary stress hormone. It naturally follows a circadian rhythm, rising in the morning to help with energy and alertness, then gradually decreasing at night to allow deep sleep and recovery. But nighttime light exposure can interfere with this cycle and keep cortisol elevated later into the evening. High nighttime cortisol creates several metabolic consequences. It increases blood sugar levels, promotes insulin resistance, stimulates appetite, and encourages fat storage, especially around the abdominal area. Elevated cortisol also increases the breakdown of muscle tissue, which further slows metabolism over time. At the same time, poor melatonin production negatively affects insulin sensitivity. Research continues to show that circadian disruption can impair the body's ability to regulate glucose properly. In simple terms, when your internal clock becomes disrupted, your cells become less responsive to insulin. This means glucose stays elevated in the bloodstream longer, forcing the pancreas to release even more insulin. Chronically elevated insulin is one of the strongest drivers of fat storage in the body. It blocks fat burning, promotes inflammation, and increases the likelihood of metabolic dysfunction over time. Sleep quality also suffers significantly when melatonin production decreases. Many people assume they are sleeping enough because they spend several hours in bed, but sleep quality matters just as much as sleep duration. Artificial light exposure before bed reduces deep sleep and REM sleep, which are critical for hormonal recovery, brain detoxification, and metabolic repair. During deep sleep, the body releases growth hormone, which helps burn fat, preserve lean muscle, repair tissues, and support cellular regeneration. But when sleep becomes fragmented due to circadian disruption, growth hormone production decreases. This creates a slower metabolic state where fat loss becomes much more difficult. The brain is also heavily affected. One of the brain's most important nighttime functions is clearing metabolic waste and toxins through a system known as the glymphatic system. This process becomes most active during deep sleep. Chronic sleep disruption may impair this natural detoxification mechanism, increasing inflammation and oxidative stress throughout the body. Artificial light exposure also impacts hunger hormones directly. Poor sleep alters leptin and ghrelin balance. Leptin is responsible for signaling fullness, while ghrelin stimulates hunger. Sleep disruption decreases leptin and increases ghrelin, leading to stronger cravings, especially for sugar and processed carbohydrates the next day. This is why people who stay up late using screens often experience increased nighttime snacking, stronger appetite the following morning, and more difficulty controlling cravings throughout the day. The problem is not simply lack of discipline. Hormones are actively changing in response to circadian disruption. Another major concern is mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are the energy-producing structures inside your cells. Melatonin actually helps protect mitochondria from oxidative damage and supports efficient energy production. Low melatonin levels may contribute to reduced cellular energy, fatigue, inflammation, and slower metabolism. Over time, repeated circadian disruption can affect nearly every major metabolic system in the body, including thyroid function, adrenal regulation, blood sugar control, and immune balance. One of the most effective ways to support nighttime fat burning and hormonal repair is minimizing artificial light exposure before sleep. Reducing screen time, dimming lights in the evening, and allowing natural darkness to signal melatonin production can significantly improve sleep quality and metabolic efficiency. Your body was designed to follow natural biological rhythms, but when artificial light repeatedly disrupts melatonin and cortisol balance, the body shifts away from repair and fat burning towards stress, insulin resistance, and fat storage. And many people never realize that one of the most powerful influences on metabolism is not only what they eat, but what their brain is exposed to after dark. What if the foods you eat at night are programming your body to store fat while you sleep? Most people focus on how much they eat, but few understand how dangerous nighttime sugar and refined carbohydrates can be for metabolism. The timing of these foods matters far more than many realize, especially when it comes to insulin, blood sugar regulation, and long-term fat storage. At night, your body enters a completely different metabolic state compared to daytime. During the evening hours, insulin sensitivity naturally decreases. That means your cells become less efficient at handling glucose. In simple terms, the same sugary snack or refined carbohydrate that causes a moderate blood sugar rise during the day can create a much larger glucose and insulin spike at night. This is one reason nighttime eating is so strongly associated with weight gain and metabolic dysfunction. When you consume sugar, desserts, bread, chips, cereal, soda, or processed carbohydrates before bed, glucose rapidly enters the bloodstream. In response, the pancreas releases insulin to lower blood sugar. But insulin is not just a blood sugar hormone. It is also one of the body's most powerful fat storage hormones. As insulin rises, the body immediately shifts away from fat burning. Fat cells stop releasing stored energy, and the body prioritizes glucose utilization instead. If excess glucose remains available, the liver converts much of it into triglycerides and stored fat. This becomes especially problematic overnight because nighttime is supposed to be a fasting and repair period. Normally, insulin should decrease while the body transitions into fat metabolism during sleep. But repeated nighttime carbohydrate intake keeps insulin elevated for hours, preventing this natural metabolic shift from occurring. One major organ affected by this process is the liver. The liver is responsible for stabilizing blood sugar and managing energy storage. When excessive sugar enters the system at night, the liver becomes overloaded with glucose processing. Excess sugar that cannot be immediately used for energy is converted into fat through a process known as de novo lipogenesis. Over time, this contributes to fatty liver disease even in people who may not appear severely overweight. Fat accumulation in the liver can impair metabolic efficiency, worsen insulin resistance, increase inflammation, and slow overall fat burning throughout the body. Another major issue involves insulin resistance itself. Constant nighttime insulin spikes force the pancreas to work harder over time. Eventually, cells become less responsive to insulin signals. This means the body requires more and more insulin to manage the same amount of glucose. This creates a dangerous metabolic cycle. Higher insulin levels promote greater fat storage, especially visceral fat around the abdomen and organs. Visceral fat is metabolically active and produces inflammatory chemicals that further worsen insulin resistance. At the same time, blood sugar instability begins affecting the brain and adrenal system during sleep. After consuming high amounts of sugar before bed, blood glucose may initially rise sharply and then crash several hours later due to excessive insulin release. When blood sugar drops too low overnight, the body interprets this as a stress signal. In response, the adrenal glands release cortisol and adrenaline to raise blood sugar back to normal levels. This stress response can interrupt deep sleep without the person fully realizing it. Many people wake up during the night, experience rapid heartbeat, restless sleep, sweating, or early morning anxiety because of nighttime blood sugar instability. Elevated nighttime cortisol creates additional problems. Cortisol encourages fat storage, particularly in the abdominal region. It also increases cravings for sugar and processed foods the following day, creating another cycle of overeating and blood sugar imbalance. The brain is also highly sensitive to these glucose fluctuations. Stable blood sugar is essential for healthy neurotransmitter balance and proper sleep architecture. When glucose levels swing dramatically during sleep, the brain struggles to maintain restorative sleep cycles, especially deep sleep and REM sleep. This matters because deep sleep is when some of the body's most important metabolic repair functions occur. Growth hormone is released during deep sleep to support fat burning, tissue repair, muscle preservation, and cellular recovery. But unstable blood sugar and elevated insulin can interfere with this entire hormonal process. Another overlooked factor is inflammation. Excess sugar intake increases oxidative stress and inflammatory activity throughout the body. Chronic inflammation disrupts hormone signaling, damages blood vessels, impairs mitochondrial function, and slows metabolic flexibility. Mitochondria, the energy-producing structures inside cells, depend on stable metabolic conditions to function efficiently. Repeated glucose spikes and insulin surges can impair mitochondrial efficiency, reducing the body's ability to produce energy and burn fat effectively. Nighttime sugar intake also affects appetite hormones. Poor sleep caused by unstable blood sugar lowers leptin, the hormone responsible for fullness, while increasing ghrelin, the hormone that stimulates hunger. This hormonal imbalance increases cravings and appetite the next day, especially for fast carbohydrates and processed foods. One of the most effective ways to support healthy metabolism is reducing sugar and refined carbohydrate intake in the evening. Allowing insulin levels to decrease before sleep gives the body the opportunity to enter a deeper fat-burning state overnight. Your body is designed to repair itself during sleep, regulate hormones, and access stored fat for energy. But when nighttime sugar repeatedly triggers insulin spikes, the body stays trapped in glucose dependence and fat storage mode. And over time, this silent metabolic disruption can gradually lead to weight gain, insulin resistance, inflammation, and much more serious long-term health problems. What if the biggest reason you keep gaining belly fat has nothing to do with eating too much, but instead comes from poor sleep silently disrupting your hormones every single night? Most people underestimate how deeply sleep controls metabolism. In reality, sleep is one of the most powerful regulators of fat burning, appetite, insulin sensitivity, and hormonal balance in the entire body. When sleep quality declines, the body immediately enters a stress response state. One of the first hormones affected is cortisol, the primary stress hormone produced by the adrenal glands. Cortisol is essential for survival in the right amounts. It helps regulate blood sugar, blood pressure, inflammation, and energy production. But when cortisol stays elevated for too long, especially overnight, it can become highly destructive to metabolic health. Under healthy conditions, cortisol follows a natural circadian rhythm. It should gradually decrease at night to allow deep sleep and recovery, then rise again in the morning to promote alertness and energy. But poor sleep changes this entire pattern. When the brain does not receive adequate deep sleep, the nervous system perceives this as physiological stress. In response, cortisol levels remain elevated during the night and often stay abnormally high the following day as well. This creates several major metabolic problems simultaneously. First, elevated cortisol increases blood sugar levels. Cortisol stimulates the liver to release stored glucose into the bloodstream because the body interprets stress as a potential energy emergency. Over time, repeated cortisol elevation contributes to insulin resistance, where cells stop responding properly to insulin signals. As insulin resistance worsens, the pancreas must release larger amounts of insulin to control blood sugar. High insulin levels then promote fat storage, particularly visceral fat deep around the abdominal organs. This is why chronic stress and poor sleep are strongly linked to stubborn belly fat. Visceral fat is especially dangerous because it behaves differently than fat under the skin. It releases inflammatory chemicals that interfere with metabolism, hormone signaling, and cardiovascular health. At the same time, elevated cortisol directly increases appetite and cravings. The body, under stress, begins demanding quick energy sources, especially sugar and refined carbohydrates. This is not simply lack of willpower. Hormones are actively changing hunger signals inside the brain. Two critical hormones become disrupted during poor sleep: leptin and ghrelin. Leptin is produced by fat cells and signals fullness to the brain. Ghrelin, produced mainly in the stomach, stimulates hunger. When sleep becomes inadequate or fragmented, leptin levels decrease while ghrelin levels rise. This hormonal shift causes people to feel hungrier, less satisfied after meals, and more likely to crave high-calorie processed foods. Studies consistently show that sleep deprivation increases cravings for sugar, fast food, and refined carbohydrates because the brain begins seeking rapid energy compensation. At the same time, poor sleep affects the brain's reward centers, making unhealthy foods appear even more appealing. This creates a powerful neurological and hormonal cycle that drives overeating without the person fully understanding why. The effects on metabolism go even deeper. During deep sleep, the body normally releases growth hormone, which supports fat burning, muscle preservation, tissue repair, and metabolic recovery. But when sleep quality decreases, growth hormone production drops significantly. This matters because lean muscle tissue plays a major role in metabolic rate. Muscle helps the body burn calories efficiently even at rest. Reduced growth hormone activity can contribute to slower muscle recovery, reduced metabolic efficiency, fatigue, and lower energy expenditure over time. Poor sleep also negatively impacts mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are the energy-producing structures inside cells responsible for generating cellular energy. Chronic sleep disruption increases oxidative stress and inflammation, both of which impair mitochondrial performance. When mitochondria become less efficient, the body struggles to produce energy properly. This often leads to fatigue, brain fog, slower metabolism, reduced exercise performance, and increased fat accumulation. Another important factor involves blood sugar stability overnight. People with poor sleep often experience greater glucose fluctuations during the night. Cortisol surges may repeatedly trigger glucose release from the liver, forcing insulin levels to remain elevated longer than normal. This constant hormonal instability prevents the body from entering an efficient fat-burning state during sleep. The thyroid gland is also affected by chronic sleep deprivation. The thyroid controls metabolic rate and energy regulation. Elevated cortisol can interfere with the conversion of inactive thyroid hormone T4 into active thyroid hormone T3. When this conversion becomes impaired, metabolism may slow down, contributing to fatigue, weight gain, cold intolerance, and reduced calorie burning. Inflammation also rises significantly with poor sleep. The immune system becomes more activated, inflammatory cytokines increase, and recovery processes become less efficient. Chronic inflammation further worsens insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. Even the gut microbiome may change due to sleep disruption. Research increasingly shows that poor sleep can alter beneficial gut bacteria involved in metabolism, appetite regulation, and inflammation control. One of the most powerful ways to improve fat burning and hormone balance is protecting sleep quality consistently. Stable sleep schedules, lower evening stress, reduced nighttime screen exposure, and avoiding heavy late-night meals can dramatically improve hormonal recovery. The body was designed to repair itself during sleep. But when sleep becomes disrupted night after night, cortisol remains elevated, hunger hormones